Hey everyone, welcome back to Tactical Magic. This is Molly Mandelberg, your host, and I have a dear friend and powerful leader here with me today. And I'm very excited for the conversation we're about to have. Erin is a brilliant coach, healer. She is very tapped into bodies and body awareness and health and nutrition. And I've known her for a few years. I also know her through her Power community, which is a networking group in Portland, which I've spoken at and I've interacted with many times, and is a powerhouse group of power people to be connected to. So she has a lot of amazing things going on. I'm really excited to have the conversation we're about to have. I'll tell you a little bit more about her before we dive in.
It's not just about mastering technology. It's not just about brand or messaging. It's not just about making more money. It's about showing up in a big way so your people can find you. This is about bringing your most wild and authentic self into the hustle and grind. Welcome to Tactical Magic, a business strategies podcast for the warrior goddess entrepreneur.
Erin Vanderkooy is a certified health coach and functional nutrition counselor who helps people eradicate unwanted symptoms and balance their own unique bodies. She teaches that this can be done by learning how to connect with what your body is telling you and by making small incremental changes that can produce life-changing results. You can be empowered with your food choices, and Erin helps add unique to you tools to your toolbox. She believes that everyone can feel good and loves helping her clients do this through curiosity without judgment. Welcome to the show, Erin.
Woohoo! Thanks for having me, Molly. Thrilled to be here.
So glad to have you here. So tell us a little bit about your own journey. I know there's a lot of people out there who are listening who are maybe not going into health coaching specifically, but who are chasing a dream and moving towards gaining new skills and tools that they can then help others with. So will you tell us a little bit about your own journey to entrepreneurship or to becoming a coach in general? What's that been like for you?
Gosh, well, I guess I'll start with my health coaching, where my health coaching all began, or the interest peaked for that particular journey. I've been an entrepreneur for probably my whole life. I know a lot of entrepreneurs have some started later in life. There's no right way to do it. My first business was a babysitting agency when I was 11. So that was my first venture. And then I've done a whole host of different things throughout my life. And in my mid-20s, I was living in London, England. I was there for almost 14 years. And I started to experience really severe IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome. And my life was deteriorating really quickly. It was affecting every aspect of my life. And I went to the doctor and told them what was happening. And they created a long list of things that could potentially be wrong. And one by one, we ruled them out, which was a huge relief until we got to the end of this list. And I was looking at the person who I was depending on for hope and solutions. And they looked me in the eye and they said, there is nothing wrong with you. And when you are in that kind of pain and discomfort, when you're rushing away from your desk at work because you can't get to the, sorry, probably too much information, but to the bathroom fast enough. And all the other things that come along with IBS, trying to figure out how to eat and things like that. It was very disappointing, frustrating, upsetting, didn't really know where to turn. And so I had to go down the path of figuring it out on my own. And luckily I had some really great mentors along the way, took some great courses and books, and ultimately led me down the path further in life when I landed in Portland, Oregon to take a health coaching certification. Since then, I've graduated as a functional nutrition counselor, as I think you mentioned. And then even more recently, I completed their advanced program, and I'm a functional nutrition lifestyle practitioner. What I found out is that Western medicine, and it's so important. I really like to balance, if I am experiencing symptoms or anything is up with my health, I really like to balance the whole spectrum. So there are so many things that I would go into my regular doctor about, or my naturopath about, or other places for. And so it was really, having that reassurance that there's no diseases is really great. Learning that we actually have the power to connect with our bodies, and also the advocacy to really be able to know that we ultimately can impact and change and have the power over our own health. It would have probably helped me a lot in my 20s in that situation when they said there's nothing wrong for me to go, okay, well, thank you, because you've helped me eliminate all these things that I really needed you to help me eliminate. And now I can move on with some other tools. And so learning that over the years has been just incredible. And like I say, empowering. And the functional nutrition approach is really looking at the whole system as one system. So instead of looking at the heart or the brain or the gut or the nervous system or the reproductive system, you're actually looking at the body as a complete whole, because one system affects the other. And in functional nutrition, they like to explain it as a tree. And so if you imagine all of the branches are symptoms. So if you're bloated or you have a rash or headaches or you're not sleeping well, whatever it might be, these are all of our symptoms. And there's things we can do to help reduce those symptoms or put a Band-Aid over them. But if we're not looking at the root and the connectedness of where that symptom is coming from, it's likely that it'll come back or it'll manifest in a different area through a different root and a different symptom. And that's how some of us get all these different symptoms that we can't sometimes figure out. A little bit about my journey and how I got to where I am today.
Amazing. Yeah. And super important. I want to highlight part of that, which is that oftentimes when we're going through a health challenge, we're looking to the experts, the doctors, the people who apparently know more than we do about bodies for resources. And I have had other clients who are in the nutritional naturopath areas of their work talk about this, that it's so discouraging to go to that expert and not get a solution or not get a holistic approach to what's going on with your body that actually answers things and works for you to reduce those symptoms or actually find the root cause. And that you're pointing towards us connecting more deeply with our bodies and us resourcing ourselves with a plethora of tools to find that root cause or find that tree trunk or whatever that's causing everything at once. That we could be empowered to do that is such a beautiful message to be sharing with the world, because we're sort of geared towards looking to someone else to help us with things. But when we're empowered to take care of our own bodies, to find an actual solution that works for us and to know how to navigate things as they continue to arise, if they do in the future, that's a really powerful place to be as a person and a really important thing to learn how to do. So let's go back to talking about what you said is listening to your body. What do you mean by that? How does that work?
Well, really connecting in and also connecting the dots. So you mentioned something about, how it might be affecting you in the future. So if we can look back at our health history, even from the day that we were born, there's things that impact us at a really young age that might manifest or show up later in life, decades later, sometimes even. So, and it's not the doctor's fault. And I really want to reiterate that it's working all as a team. It's being your own health advocate. It's talking to your doctor. It's talking to the holistic practitioner, and then combining all of these things and making a decision on how you move forward. And the thing with that is that it takes time. And we're so used to this quick fix, getting a pill or a cream or a test or something, maybe not test is the wrong example, but getting something that's more like a Band-Aid and not addressing the actual root, because the root does take time. So that is connecting and listening to your body, tracking and assessing. So if you're not sleeping right, well, maybe for a few days you're tracking what you're eating. And this isn't about portion control. Don't get me going about calories and things like that, because that's just, when we're eating nutrient dense foods, we can be eating as much as we like. We don't want to be having to measure minute. That's not sustainable. But really tracking, because it might be something like you didn't realize you were actually eating a little bit of dark chocolate every evening before bed, and that caffeine was affecting your sleep. Nothing wrong with dark chocolate. Everyone is completely unique and completely individual. There's no right or wrong, good or bad. It's about looking at your unique body, connecting in, witnessing, looking back and connecting dots, and then experimenting. So really getting your detective hat on and becoming your own health investigator, whether that's over a few days or a few months, depending, if you don't have acute symptoms, maybe you're looking at preventative health, and that would look really different from somebody who's having really acute symptoms that are affecting your life, like my IBS did at that time. Thinking about another functional description is looking at the body like a soup. So this pot of beautiful, amazing soup, and we're putting food into this, on a daily basis. And of course that affects it. And so does your environment. So stress, relationships, work, movement, so many things outside of just what goes in our body that affects how we feel. And everybody has a different tipping point. So if you are eating the most perfect foods for you, because everyone is different, someone's perfect food might be someone else's. And I'm not talking about good or bad food when I say perfect, because there is no good or bad food, or the foods, I should say, that really nourish and support them. And if their stress is off the charts, or maybe they're going through a divorce or the death of a loved one, there's so many life things that we just don't have control over. And that's going to be the tipping point where it boils over. And that's when symptoms manifest. And what's really can be tricky is the symptom might be different in everyone. So I had a candida diagnosis a few years back, and my naturopath was so great. I was at the time was having a hard time being easy on myself because I thought, how did this happen? I'm a health coach, for goodness sakes. Like, this is what I teach. And the thing we have to remember, and that I was reminded in that moment, is there are so many things that are beyond our control. And what I just mentioned is exactly what I was going through. I had just experienced the death of a loved one, and I was going through a divorce, and my body was on overload. And the way she explained it to me, which I really love, and I use this with my clients as well, is she said, Erin, everyone has a different path. So and she didn't use a soup analogy, but now that I have that background thinking about the soup analogy, it might come out in high blood pressure. It might come out in your cholesterol is off or your blood sugar is off. And it's not this cookie cutter approach. So while the cookie cutter approach really works for very specific diagnoses, which doctors are great at helping us with and also helping us through with medication, sometimes that's really important. And it's a cookie cutter approach. So it's just different for every individual. And it really hurt at that time. And now I hope it also helps with my clients is not being hard on ourselves and thinking, I did something wrong, or I didn't, I could have known better, because we just don't. And, wherever it manifests, again, it's going back into the tree analogy and into the roots to figure out how we can balance that out. And I just think it's empowering for individuals to realize that. It's also, it makes this kind of healthcare more accessible. With my clients, I don't go straight to, you need to have all these tests and I need lab work and the oats test and the Dutch test. I mean, these tests are really great for specific times sometimes, but there's so much work that we can do to create homeostasis in the body and help balance our health and wellness that doesn't require any of that. It's literally things we all have access to. Mindfulness around eating more vegetables, drinking lots of water, moving our body, breathing, all of these basics,
Yeah, but basics that a lot of us don't put enough attention on making sure we're getting, which is...
Well, and sometimes it's because we don't have the education. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, totally.
And that's the piece. And that's what also makes it more accessible for everyone, right? Which everyone deserves to have optimum health and to feel good. And this is one of the other things that I really like to talk about or talk into is that, our levels of normal. So we might start getting bloated after we eat. And we think, I can live with being bloated. It's not IBS. It's not impacting my life. I'm just a little bit uncomfortable. A few weeks later, now I have a little rash that comes and goes. It's just a little rash on my hand, not the end of the world. And sometimes these symptoms can build up where in a few weeks or months, or sometimes even over a decade, now you have 4 or 5 of these so-called things that aren't really that big of a deal, but your level of normal, now you have a rash that itches, you have bloating that is uncomfortable, and we're taught, it's part of aging, it's in my genes, it's just how my body's made, which is, I call bullshit. Sorry, I don't know if I can say on the podcast.
Yes, you can say.
I call bullshit on that, right? Like, we can feel better as we age. It is possible. And what we need to understand is that if the rash is there, it's telling us something. If the bloating is there, it's telling us something. So it's a little bit of a longer approach to figure that out and assess and then course correct. But Molly, I've worked with you in the past as well. And one of my favorite analogies of you, and I actually use this in my coaching, is, and I hope I don't butcher it, but is the trajectory, right? So we're thinking about if we're heading, and for me, I use it for health, for you use it for different things. But when you're on a health trajectory and you have these symptoms, and let's say you can kind of guess where you're going to be in 1 year or 5 years or 10 years. And if you can make teeny tiny little changes, tiny little incremental changes to fix that bloating or to get the rash to permanently stay away, not just put a Band-Aid on it, our trajectory completely changes. And now in 5 or 10 years, we're a totally different person than potentially some of these things that could manifest from ignoring stuff like that. We're using the excuse that society provides us of age or genes or your body or whatever it might be,
Yeah. And it's amazing to take that control. I love saying the aging thing is a cop-out. It's bullshit. I was having some hair loss happening to me a few months ago, and everyone I talked to was like, oh yeah, you're in your mid-30s. That's just normal. That's just happening. And I was like, no, I knew that did not have to be true for me. And so I was looking at all those different angles of what could I be doing for my body that my body isn't receiving already? what kind of stress can I reduce in my life? Because there was a lot of drama going on in my relationship at that point. And I was like, this needs to change and this needs to be added. And now a couple months later, that is not the same. The hair loss is just totally different. It's like back to normal. So yes, don't buy into the norm, because it's part of our society almost to say that our bodies deteriorate. It's like something we all agree to. And it's like that projection is something we're living into when we say, oh, my body just does this now, instead of why does it do it? And what can I do about it? And how can I treat myself differently so that it doesn't have to be that way if it's uncomfortable, or if it's inconveniencing me, or if it could become something greater later. Why not look at it now?
Well, and I love your analysis over that, the sounds of what, without going into a ton of detail. I love the analysis and how you were able to recognize certain things that, and I don't want to diminish, maybe these were harder or bigger things for you to deal with at the time, but course correct. You just mentioned 2 or 3 things that you were able to shift ever so slightly that you then could see, and that tracking and assessing to be able to see, well, I did a little shift. Was there a result? Yes or no? Shift some more or continue. You can make these decisions as you go and diminish it, but it can be as simple as that, right? It can be as simple as just pausing, slowing down, recognizing what's happening and doing some shifting work. And remembering that it's not just what goes in our body, it's everything else that affects our health. There are so many studies and research out there about everything other than the food as well, which is all things that we have control over. And same with genes. At one point, not that long ago, research was saying that I think something crazy like 90% of what we experience health-wise is in our genes, which makes it very frustrating because you think, well, what the heck can I do about 90%? Not an awful lot.
Right. Until
they discovered epigenetics. And we realized that, yes, genes are an influence on our health and wellness. But what they figured out later, which is genius, is that we can turn these genes on and off. And that is going back to the soup analogy. When we look at what is happening that's making us spill over, what can we change or remove? And I think that's also good to remember if you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself, again, looking at the good or bad or the right or wrong, yes, eating organic is really, really great and wonderful and supportive. And if you're not in a position to buy a lot of people can't buy all their produce organic. It's just a reality. And that's okay. So there's this wonderful list that they update every year called the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. And you can go online and find out the foods that are highest in pesticides, because that's, again, thinking about our overall soup, right? So if we're eating those high pesticides foods and then you add on all these other things and you might be tipping over and manifesting the symptoms, what can you change? And then there's the Clean 15, which are the ones that don't have that many pesticides. And so it's best to eat produce than not eat produce at all, even if it's not organic. So making it accessible, it's the education piece as well, and just not putting so much pressure on yourself. And also, we're so bombarded with information, which on the one hand is amazing. We can get onto Google and we can find out, let's eat, an anti-inflammatory diet or a FODMAP diet or, whatever it might be. And some of these protocols are wonderful and they're great for a time and a place, and they're really supportive. Some of them are not sustainable or not meant to be done long term. But it's really frustrating if you hear from a friend or if you read the science and then you try something and it doesn't work for you. And that's because it's not meant for everybody. It's going to work for one individual. So really picking and choosing and trying things on, putting that detective hat back on, what's working, what's not. Keeping a health journal is another really great tool.
Yeah. And I think just tracking that too, being aware of what's going on with your body and testing different things. I gave up dairy a few years ago, kind of just to see if I could, and also to see, how I felt different, if it was actually something I should be eating or not eating, because there was a lot of dairy in my diet. And I didn't feel different at all for the month that I went without it. But when I tried to reintroduce it, my body was very not okay with it. And it's kind of good to know, because now it's a lot easier not to eat dairy, because it physically hurts to do it. It just makes me feel unwell after I eat it, which makes it so much easier to avoid it. But I would have never known that if I hadn't been, curious and trying things and seeing, is this something that impacts my body? I think with something like that, when we're so used to it, we may not even realize that it's potentially bubbling our soup over, to use your analogy, until we take it away, and then we can see that reaction even more heavily. So I know that you guide people through sometimes doing elimination diets and stuff like that.
Yeah, you've got it spot on, because some people say, oh, I removed it and now I can't eat it. I wish I never removed it. And what they don't realize is that it was small, but it was impacting them every single day. So that's talking again about that level of normal, right? Like, how can we move our level of normal up to feeling fantastic? Some people don't even realize, because it's such a slow build, like I say, sometimes decades, that they don't even realize that they feel like shit every day, right? Yeah. And then they start experimenting, pardon the language, but they start experimenting with things like this. So I think it's really exciting. And it's not that reintroducing it for everyone would have a reaction. You know, a lot of people would reintroduce dairy and be absolutely fine. You could even get more minute, and you know, talking about the organic, inorganic, especially with dairy, because there's lots of hormones and antibiotics and things like that added to dairy that we're not unaware of. Mm-hmm. And so you could even get more minute and even try organic versus unorganic dairy, or even different types. For me, I do avoid dairy for the most part, but I can pretty much handle goat's cheese, no problem, which is great in salads or on my gluten-free pizza. Mm-hmm. And so you can find some products in dairy are fine, and others maybe not so much. And so it's just having a playful attitude towards it. And yeah, I mean, do you want me to say a little bit about my food intolerance program?
Sure. Yeah. Tell us about it. Yeah, definitely.
So, you know, and tying in that playfulness to it. So, it's funny because it's an elimination program. We take out all the known trigger foods plus some extras that stimulate us, because we need to be able to connect with our body in a really profound way. And I use the words fun, exciting, tasty, enjoyable, and people look at me like I have two heads, because the word elimination and fun, or even for some people thinking about, I try and veer away from using the word healthy, but think about healthy foods. They think that they taste like cardboard or there's no flavor. And I'm so passionate about food and get so excited over taste and flavor. And so proving that they can coexist, something that's nutrient dense and supportive of how your body is going to function. So yeah, we eliminate foods for just 2 weeks, and then we slowly reintroduce them over a 2 to 3 week period. It's different for each person, because I tailor or personalize the experience for each participant. And what's really cool is, like you said, some people have things like dandruff that went away after experiencing it for 15 years, or cramping or bloating or whatever, some of those symptoms we've already talked about, that just vanish and don't come back. And then we're set up to sustainably be able to eat and be empowered around our food choices moving forward. A lot of people, myself included, struggle with giving up gluten. It took me 8 years, and I work with clients to tell them that it doesn't need to take them that long. I'm a little stubborn, and if you're stubborn or a rebel in nature, I'm here for you, and I hear you. And there's some grief attached to that, right? Going through life, maybe not eating dairy or not eating gluten. And there's tips and ways to get through that, so that you can still feel not deprived, so you can feel satiated, like you have lots of options. So yeah, I really get excited about that program, mostly just to see the transformation of the participants. And the thing that came out of it that I wasn't expecting, I've been running this for a few years now, was yes, figuring out your food intolerances, and yes, coming to terms with how to be empowered around your eating. But what's come out of it was inspiration and excitement. And I think it's important also, going back to the no right or wrong, good or bad, to know that we don't have to do things in a specific way. There's no shoulds or have tos. If you don't like cooking, and you only want to cook like 10 or 20% of your meals, but you still want to eat nutrient dense, there's a way we can meet you where you're at with that. Mm-hmm. You know, and so clients come out of this program and they just feel really motivated and inspired and excited, and especially going against, you know, calorie counting or diet culture. There's none of that. It gives you a freedom afterwards to really feel excited and connected and empowered, all those fun.
I love that too. And I imagine having a group program setting for that, because I know through the group programs that I lead, and especially on a topic like elimination of foods in our diet, that it's hard to stay on track. It's hard to stay motivated, and to have a group going through it together has to be so supportive of, like, there's accountability, there's other people giving insights and inspiration, there's people there to support you when you're like, I can't do it today. And so I imagine that's a really supportive environment to have other people having your back while you're navigating something that's a little uncomfortable at first.
The group support and accountability is one of my favorite things to witness. And they get really into, so I supply meal plans and all sorts of recipes, and they get really into creating their own or finding their own. And so we connect on a WhatsApp group thread, and it's flying with photos and recipes and ideas.
Well, tell people how to get more info on that. How do people join the program? When is it starting? How does it work?
I'm running it just one time this year, which is right as we hit spring in 2022. So it's March 22nd, 2022 when we kick off. And I usually do it for 6 weeks, but this is the first time I'll be doing it for 8 weeks. And I feel like that's really going to give us a nice lead in and a nice little cushion on the end. And then the middle part to get into the muck together and experiment and have some fun. So I'm really looking forward to it. We already have a great group coming together. So they can enroll on my website. It's called the Uniquely Nourished, because we're all unique. We're all as unique as our fingerprints, which is kind of mind-blowing. Food intolerance. You can sign up there, erinvanderkooy.com.
Okay, awesome. We will put that link in the show notes so that people can check it out. And are there other places that people can follow you or connect with you?
Yes, Instagram is great. I made my first reel the other day, Molly. You'd be so proud of me.
I am proud of you.
You know, it was so great. I was cry laughing through the whole. I had a blast. So for all the resistance I've had around social media and Instagram, and I was like, I'm never doing reels, and I had a blast. And it's really kind of a cool reel, if I do say so.
I'll go check it out after this.
It's Erin _ it's talking about apple pie oatmeal, my fave.
Awesome.
Erin _ Vanderkooy is Instagram. And then I'm on Facebook as well.
Awesome. So go follow Erin _ Vanderkooy, VANDERKOOY on Instagram. Find that apple pie oatmeal reel
sweet.
And
you can just
comment on it so that she knows you heard this podcast. Awesome. Hopefully there'll be more reels up there by the time people listen to this. But yeah, you have so much wisdom to share, Erin. And I just want to celebrate the fact that you've shown up to support people with something that's uncomfortable and scary and hard to admit that we don't have figured out or we don't have right by ourselves, and to guide people through empowering themselves on that journey is such beautiful work. And I know how grateful your clients must be for the support that you're giving them. And I'm just glad to know you and that you're out in the world doing this stuff. And we have a few seconds left. Is there any last words of wisdom that you'd like to leave people with?
Thank you for your time today. It's been a long time coming. I'm really thrilled to be here. If they want to sign up for my newsletter, I send out wellness tips and tricks with that as well. I also have a free food, mood, poop journal on my website. That's under free resources. I talk about poop a lot. So.
I have a poop tracking app because of you.
That's amazing. Poop, again, this is a free window resource into our health that everyone has access to. I know it's a little uncomfortable at first, but I'm determined to take away the stigma of checking out your poop every once in a while, if not all the time, and seeing what's going on in there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Erin, for being on the show. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I hope you go check out that program, whether they're big or small symptoms that you're dealing with. We wish you the most gentle awareness and the most powerful healing process. And hopefully you find the guidance that you need, whether it's Erin or some other path, to feel empowered with your health and your body, and to build that sense of trust between you and your body so that you can take care of it as well as possible and feel fantastic. And with that, we'll see you next week for another episode of Tactical Magic. Hope you have a great day.